Hey there everyone, and welcome to RPG Horror Stories with D&D Doge. In today's episode, we have a tale about a player that becomes overly obsessed with his DM, a story about a vegan player demanding that the Dungeon Master change his game world, and much more. So, without further ado, let's get right into these D&D horror stories. Player came to a game, then said his character didn't want to go on the adventure, left the call, and then blamed me. By Reddit user, King of Hearts V3. Hi all. So, I was running Curse of Strahd, and I was using MandyMod's version. I used a new hook. All of my player characters would receive a dream based off of their backstory, and a personal plot hook that would give them motivation to go to Barovia. An example, one character's mother was dying, so in his dream, I had an image of his mother speedily growing frail, withering away, and the herb to heal her appeared in front of her. As he ran to grab it, he was stabbed through the chest, as Strahd took the plant, placed it on a shelf, and watched his mother die while he bled out. This particular player, who we will refer to as Chris, had a decent enough backstory. He was a goblin, and his first real friends were a couple of halflings that he met in a merc troop. One of those halflings went missing, and he spends most of his days searching for her. His dream showed her as a blood cow in Strahd's castle, and after a quick one-shot, where we roleplayed the dream, he said that he was psyched. Fast forward to session 1. As they meet up with the Vistani, who take them to Barovia, at the gates, his character said, "I don't think I want to go." After that, I called a quick 15-minute break while I used the restroom and figured stuff out. As I was gone, he told everyone, bye, and when I came back, he left. The following day, he messaged me about making a new character. I was kinda pissed, and my Sunday is my off day, as I don't do anything D&D related, and I never replied to him. The next day, I used the excuse that I didn't see it, instead of telling him I was pissed and I didn't want to talk to him. The day after that, he messaged everyone in the game, including my fiancé, and said that I was a liar since he looked through my League of Legends game history and saw that I played a few games. I don't know what else he said because I never asked the other players, and my fiancé accidentally deleted the Discord messages before I could see them. But all I know is that he sent them a paragraph or two of why he despises me, that I'm the worst DM ever, and a liar. I know it shouldn't, but it still bothers me almost a year later. What? First off, this player said that he was psyched after his character's background was roleplayed, only for him to turn tail and say that his character didn't want to go and then leave the game? That is so confusing. And I can understand OP not wanting to respond to a message right away, as sometimes it's best to not respond in anger and respond with a cooler head. But then Chris gets mad that OP played League of Legends? Honestly, you all dodged a bullet right there. This player just sounds extremely unstable. Let's move on. DMing homebrew, and vegan player demands a cruelty-free world. Need advice. By Reddit user, Emotional Macaroon 169. Nice. Hi all. This is a throwaway account, as my players know my main, and I'd rather they not know about this conflict, since I've chatted to them individually, and they've not been the nicest to each other in response to this. I'm running a homebrew campaign, which has been running for a few years now, and we recently had a new player join. This player is a mutual friend of a few people in the group, who agreed that they'd fit the dynamic well, and it really looked like things were going nicely for a few sessions. In the most recent session, they visited a Tabaxi village. In this homebrew world, the Tabaxi live in isolated tribes in the desert, so the player characters befriended them and spent some time using the village as a base from which to explore. The problem arose after the most recent session, where the hunters brought back a wild pig, prepared it, and then shared the feast with the player characters. One of the PCs is a chef by background and enjoys roleplay around food, so he described his enjoyment of the feast in a lot of detail. The new vegan player messaged me after that session, telling me that it was wrong and cruel to do that to a pig, even if it's fictional. and that she was feeling uncomfortable with both the chef player's roleplay, as quite a lot of it had been him trying new foods, often non-vegan, as the setting is Lord of the Rings type fantasy, and also several of my descriptions of things up till now, like saying that a tavern served a meat stew, or describing the bad state of a neglected dog that the party later rescued. She then went on to say that she deals with so much of this cruelty on a daily basis that she doesn't want it in her fantasy escape game, and that since it's my world and I can do anything I want with it, it should be no problem to make it cruelty-free, and that if I don't, I'm the one being cruel against vegan values, even though I do eat meat. I'm not really sure if that's a reasonable request to make. Things like food, which I was using as flavor, can potentially go under the abstraction layer, but the chef player will miss out on the core part of his roleplay, which also gave me an easy way to make places distinct based on the food that they serve. Part of me also feels like things like the neglect of the dog are core story beats that allow the player characters to do things that make the world a better place and feel like heroes. So that's the situation. I don't want to make the vegan player uncomfortable, but I'm also wary of making the whole world and story bland if I comply with her demands. She sent me a list of what's not okay, and it basically includes any harm to animals, period. Any advice on how to handle this is appreciated. Thank you. Well, by the sounds of it, this player joined an ongoing campaign, and for her to make demands of OP to change things to fit her vegan values is a bit self-centered and insane. I mean, it's a game where you're going to be fighting monsters, people, and yes, sometimes wildlife. And while I can understand some people not wanting more extreme or adult themes in their games, I mean, come on, it's a fantasy world where people are going to eat meat. Honestly, she sounds like one of those PETA people that go into a grocery store, pour milk out onto the floor while preaching to shoppers and expecting them to heed their message and not just see them as annoying. My advice would be to tell her that if the simple fact that meat is a part of the game that she joined, that was already running for years mind you, bothers her, then maybe this isn't the game for her. And I'm honestly not surprised that this player demanded something stupid like this. I mean, she is vegan after all. And it wouldn't surprise me if she was one of those people that tries to give a cat a vegan diet. Seriously, I hate it when I see people do that. I'm getting a bit off topic here, so let's move on. Kicked a player for harassing me, and now he is harassing others to get to me. By Reddit user, Ultimate Klutz. I never wanted to add this player to my D&D campaign in the first place. I had met him prior, as we go to the same school, and he was very rude, in the sense that he wouldn't let anyone speak, and if you ignored him, he will repeat himself louder and louder until you listen to him. The only reason I ever let him join was as a favor to the person who got me into D&D. Some important context is that I am a female DM. His first session. The first really big indicator that him joining was going to be a crap show was him asking me if he was allowed to change the narrative if he didn't like the way the story was going. I told him no. His response to this was to argue with me about how he really wanted to change the story for his character's benefit. At this point, he didn't even know the plot of the campaign or had even played D&D before. Eventually, I was able to get him to back down about it. Throughout the campaign, he kept cutting me and other members of the campaign off in order to either tell me that he wanted me to change the story, try and override someone else's turn, or even just say my name repeatedly until I looked at him. He was pissing me off, but I wanted to try to make this work. I didn't like how he was behaving, but for the moment, it was slightly tolerable. His second session. This session took place this past Friday. We had had a 2-week delay for this session, and I was very excited about what I had planned. I sat down at the table and started setting up, just a few seconds before he sat down directly next to me. It was just me and him, and the first thing he said was, "There are a few other girls that I like, but my name, I have a crush on you." I felt uncomfortable, but wanted to let him down easy, so I said, "That's sweet." This did not stop him. He started to ask me to be his girlfriend, and I kept telling him no. This went on for a minute or two, but eventually he figured out that I wasn't going to say yes. So this genius started asking me to be his Valentine. This time, I just told him that I don't date younger men, so that he would hopefully leave me alone. This is when everyone else started to show up, which was what actually got him to shut up. I felt very uncomfortable and pissed off, but I was excited for this session, and he wasn't about to ruin it for me. He behaved exactly the same as he had at the previous sessions. He cut people off, asked me to change the story for him, and also intentionally killed another party member who was trapped and refused to accept responsibility for it. I raised my voices more and also became more rude to him as the session and his shenanigans continued. I honestly didn't intend to be a jerk back to him, but I am terrible at hiding when I dislike someone. By the end of the session, I had decided that he wasn't going to be invited back. The aftermath. It isn't over. The weekend goes by, and I think everything is over and that he won't bother me. I still believed that going into today. Unfortunately, I was wrong. The entire day seemed normal to me until my last class of the day. I got a text from one of the underclassmen that I eat lunch with, saying that she had heard rumors that I was rude to someone during my campaign last week, and she wanted to ask me what had happened. So I explained to her what had actually happened. Her response was telling me that I should give him a second chance because he is new to D&D and didn't mean to be a jerk. I texted her back, explaining that I didn't feel comfortable around him because he wouldn't take no for an answer when he was asking me out. At this point, she asked me to skip class in order to come talk to him in person because he won't leave her alone. I wasn't about to skip class for this, especially seeing how he was trying to get my attention by telling my friend that rumor. Not just one of my friends, but also one of my teachers. That teacher told me before I went home that during one of his lessons, this guy barged in looking for me and saying that he wanted to talk about D&D. Closing thoughts. I honestly am not sure what I should do from here. I suspect that he's been following or watching me, and is probably how he knew that the underclassmen knew me and that I had that teacher. I don't want him going around spreading fake rumors about me because I kicked him out of the campaign and rejected him, but I also don't want to confront him in person about this. He is way bigger than me. If anyone has any advice or suggestions, please share them. Thank you for reading. Man, this dude sounds completely unhinged. Going to your friend to talk about what happened is one thing, but bursting into one of your teacher's classes screaming about wanting to talk to you about D&D is on a whole other level. As far as suggestions would go, I would get some friends to come with you to confront this dude and lay it out flat that you don't want anything to do with him. If that doesn't do it, I would talk to the administration of the school about this and try to get some sort of rule of separation from him. And if it extends beyond the school, then it would be time to look into an actual legal restraining order. Some people can become super obsessive, and it's best to take every precaution when dealing with someone like that. I wish you best of luck, OP. That sounds like a pain. Anyway, let's move on. Leaving player kills entire party. By Reddit user JMLWow123. I wish the title was the worst of it, honestly. So basically, this player was leaving the campaign due to work conflicts, which is fine. However, unknown to us at the time was that he and the DM planned for him to be the first boss that we fight in the campaign. It could be a cool concept, except that he min-maxes, and the DM gave him a bunch of powerful cursed items, and said, "Kill as many as you can." Mind you, no one knows that our fellow party member is about to kill us all. So we take a side quest to kill a young adult dragon, and the entire time, this player was sitting back doing nothing and not getting hit. We kept telling him to use spell slot spells, but he didn't. Then, after the dragon died, he attacked us. We thought he was charmed for a while, until I used the spell and we realized that we were betrayed. Needless to say, he 1v4'd the party, and he and the DM were laughing. And then the DM says, "See, I didn't do anything. You guys killed yourselves." After that, the campaign died because no one wanted to play anymore. Now, this could have been a really cool way for a player that can't play anymore to leave a campaign, if done right. Instead, it sounds like the DM purposefully made the leaving player way overpowered with the primary goal of getting a TPK. Perhaps the DM just wanted to scrap the campaign and start fresh. But if that's what he wanted, he totally went about it the wrong way. And in the end, lost all of the players because of it. But before we move on, we have a special request from Alice. How could you resist that face? I'm totally giving her a treat after the video. And yes, it will have meat. Now, let's move on to the following story. DM kills player in first combat and replaces the party next session. By Reddit user, Ecstatic Original 20. This happened around 7 months ago, but I was in a game with other players who I'll just refer to by their class. So session 0 goes by pretty well. It's supposed to be a game of D&D with a balance between combat and roleplay. All the players and DM seemed very nice, and I was excited to play. Every player, including myself, had worked in the same tavern before it got burned down, so we all knew each other in the game. This backstory was approved by the DM, but come session 1, it was thrown out of the window by them. The first half of the session was alright, except for being a bit railroady. My character, a half-orc rogue, befriended a kobold thief who would have probably been adopted by the party if we had stayed talking to him. Eventually, we got a job to guard a very minor noble as he moved through a bad part of town to handle some business. It turns out the noble's business is with the desert marauder leader, who's in the process of hanging a few people he doesn't like. One of them's the kobold that we met about 4 hours ago in game time. Not wanting to see our NPC buddy and 2 other innocent people get hanged in the middle of the street, our cleric intervenes, and it looks like it's going to be a fight. We all roll initiative, and keep in mind that it's the first combat of the campaign, and we're level 1. So we start fighting, and eventually it's the marauder's turn. He walks up to the cleric, rolls to hit, and deals about 40 damage total, killing them instantly. The cleric didn't even get a turn, and their death wasn't special in any way. It was just, alright, he walks up to you, deals this much damage with his sword, and cuts your head off. You're dead. We continue to fight, and it's going too well. Our ranger got a crit on the marauder, but he had this ability where any attack against him has a 50% chance to miss because he could turn his body into sand. I probably would have also died if not for being a half-orc, and we decided to just run away. The session ends shortly after, and I'm pulled into a group chat with the other players. For the next several days, we talk about what to do. Do we leave the game? Do we write a message to our DM about what we didn't like and how it could be fixed? Well, 2 days before the following session, our hand was basically forced when one of the players checked the Roll20 and saw that there were now 10 total players in the game. Our party was 5 players strong, and we found out that we had been replaced by the DM, so we all left the game instantly. Well, I would say that the first red flag in this story is that during session 0, everyone, including the DM, agreed to everyone's backstories, but come session 1, the DM decided to retcon it. Then throwing in an enemy that was probably way too high of a challenge rating to face against a level 1 party and killing the cleric instantly. This DM probably realized that he goofed, but instead of admitting it, he just drops all the current players and started fresh. I would say that that outcome was probably best for the players, as they avoided playing more games with this DM. Let's move on. They crucified a hobgoblin. By Reddit user, Relation Shark. This was one of the earlier games I'd ran. We had done some basic questing in combat, and it was all going pretty good. The tone of the campaign was fairly serious, but we still like to have jokes every now and then. It's not an evil campaign, as the party were going to be classic heroes. Up to this point, the most morally questionable thing they had done was stomping out some Drider eggs. I was inexperienced and assumed that Driders laid eggs to reproduce. I had the party on a road with a cart heading towards a town. En route, they were stopped by a group of Hobgoblins who weren't immediately doing anything wrong. They questioned the party's intentions, asking what their business was in the area. One player assumed that they were evil, and so used invisibility to get behind them and cast a damaging spell. A battle ensued, and the party won, but they had one left alive. After questioning him, he told the party that they had created the checkpoint because of an increase in dangerous activity in the area, thus revealing that the Hobgoblins had noble intentions. Though the party didn't seem bothered by this, and one player, the Dragonborn, decided that he wanted to leave a warning up. From some of the wood in the Hobgoblin's checkpoint, he created a cross and proceeded to literally crucify the Hobgoblin. I was dumbstruck, just asking if they were really doing this, and then reluctantly describing what happened in response to this, while half of the party laughed about it. In retrospect, it was pretty psychotic. Nothing so demented has happened since. What's the most effed up thing that your party has done? Yeah, I would say that is pretty sadistic, considering they were supposed to be playing hero characters. Overall, if this bothered you, you can always tell the players that you don't really like that. Otherwise, you can always just introduce some consequences for this event sometime down the line. And if you're playing using alignment, I would shift the Dragonborns to chaotic evil. Though, as for the most messed up thing one of my characters have done, I would say it was my first session with my rogue, when he used a decapitated goblin head as a bowling ball to trigger a trap so that our party could pass. How about you guys? What is the most messed up thing that your party has done? But that will do it for today. As always, I appreciate all of you, and may your games remain horror story free. Until next time.